Hey everyone, this is Sahiti from Edureka and welcome to this session on Introduction to UiPath. So thank you all the attendees for joining in today's session. Before we start, all of you just give me a quick confirmation on the chat window whether I'm audible or not. Okay, I've got a yes from Avinash, Vikram, Pooja, Ananya, and I've got a few more yeses too. So we're good enough to start. So now, without wasting any further time, let's look into all the topics that we're going to cover in today's session. We will start today's session by looking into what is RPA and then look into what are the various tools used in RPA. After that, I'm going to tell you guys how to install UiPath on your computer and then discuss different project types offered by UiPath. Later on, we will cover all the components which are available on the tool, and towards the end, we will be looking at a hands-on wherein we will use all the knowledge that we have gained through this session. So is the agenda clear to everyone? Okay, I've got many yeses. So now let's get started with the first topic for this session, that is what is RPA? Well, RPA is an acronym for Robotic Process Automation. Now, what do these terms Robotic Process Automation mean? Well, robotic means any entity which tries to mimic the human actions, right? So, any entity which tries to mimic human actions and performs complex tasks can be termed as robotic. Then comes process. So any sequence of steps that lead to a meaningful activity can be called as a process. So it could be a process of making coffee or your favorite dish or your favorite recipe or anything. After that comes automation. So automation means doing the task without human intervention. So basically, any entity that performs tasks without human intervention is said to be automated. So now let's just summarize all these terms together. So robots mimicking human behavior to execute a sequence of steps which lead to a meaningful activity without human intervention is said to be RPA. So moving on, as we know what RPA means, let's look into how we can implement RPA technology. You can implement RPA technology using the leading tools available in the market. The leading tools available in the market are UiPath, Blue Prism, and Automation Anywhere. We will be using UiPath tool, but first let me tell you guys why are we not using other top tools like Blue Prism and Automation Anywhere. So if we talk about Blue Prism guys, Blue Prism doesn't provide any trial version. Coming to Automation Anywhere, it provides a trial version, but the trial version is only limited to 50 tasks. So if you want to practice or learn RPA, then these are not the tools to go for, as they do not offer proper trial versions, whereas UiPath tool offers a proper trial version. It offers a community edition by which you can practice RPA, and if you feel you want to implement it at a business level, then you can go ahead and buy a license as well. So well guys, that is the reason that you will be using UiPath tool. So now for you guys to practice UiPath, let's discuss how to install UiPath. You have to first go to this link, that is www.uipath.com/community. So let me just go to the link. Let me just type on www.uipath/community. So once you go onto this website, scroll down and then you have to click on Get Community Edition. Once you click on that, you will be redirected to the screen where you have to fill in all the details such as first name, last name, email ID, etc. So once you fill in all the details, you have to click on Request Community Edition. After you click on it, you will reach this page which will basically acknowledge that you have requested the UiPath Studio. And after that, it will automatically get downloaded. Just in case if the download doesn't begin, then you can click here on the download manually option and then it will get downloaded. Okay, so once your file is downloaded, you just have to double click on it and it will automatically get executed. So once it is executed, you would see this on the screen. Well, there are no wizards to be set up with the UiPath, so it will just get installed within 1 or 2 minutes, and once it is done, you will be prompted to this particular screen. On this screen, you have to enter the same details as you entered on the registered page. If we talk about this page, all you have to enter is the email ID and the device ID, which will be automatically entered. So basically, you won't have to touch the device ID and you just have to enter your email address and click on Activate. So once your tool is installed, it will show you a screen which acknowledges successfully that UiPath is installed on your system. So once it is installed, you can go ahead and you can use UiPath Studio. So now let's go ahead and get started with UiPath Studio now. So when you open your UiPath Studio, this is what you'll see on the screen. You'll be prompted with a dialog box which says to choose your license key. Well, presently we're using Community Edition, so we'll choose the option of Continue Free. Once it is done, you'll be prompted with a screen where you have to choose the project of your choice. So you have four types of project options here: the blank project, the simple process, the agent process improvement, and the robotic enterprise framework. So how will you choose your project is something we're going to discuss next. But before that, there are two key concepts that you have to understand whenever you're using UiPath. So what are these two key concepts? Well, the first one you should understand is what is an activity, and then you should understand what is a sequence. So what is an activity? So any small task that you do in UiPath or during automation is known as activity. So it could be clicking on the right button of the mouse or doing something on the clipboard or copying some text from somewhere, or any such task can be defined as activities. Now, when we combine these activities, they lead to meaningful tasks. For example, if you have to restart your PC, what you have to do is you just have to click on start and then you have to choose to restart, and so your PC starts restarting. So, to achieve any event, you have to combine these meaningful tasks and then these can be known as sequence. Alright, so basically these are the two key concepts that you have to understand before using UiPath. So now that you're clear with the two key concepts, let's look into the different types of projects that we have in UiPath Studio. So like I said before, there are four types of projects that UiPath provides. We have the blank project, the simple process, the agent process improvement, and then we have the robotic enterprise framework. So let's discuss each one of these one by one. Let's start with the blank project now. So guys, this is the screen of your blank project. So basically that's how it looks. As the name suggests, a blank project is a clean slate. So it has no templates or nothing predefined on your workspace. You have to define everything from scratch. Okay, so whenever you need something from scratch or you want to build a new simple project, you can use blank project. Then comes the project simple process. So simple process is basically a template for flowchart. Now why do we need a flowchart or why do we need a use case? Well, when you have a use case where input can lead to two different kind of sequences or two different kind of activities or maybe two different kind of tasks, then we would use flowcharts. For example, you see a true and false condition here. So if you have to go for true, then you'll do this particular thing. And if you have to go for false, then you'll do this particular thing. Let me also explain you further with an example. If you're the admin of a company, then you can send emails to anyone. But if you aren't the admin of your company, then you can only access your desktop. Now, coming to the third kind of process, that is the agent process improvement. This is used to assist any user working on the system. For example, if you're working on a system and you want to cut the task, one way to do that is to right click it and then choose to cut. Another way to do that is to simply select that particular icon and then choose to cut. This would cut that particular icon. So whenever you want to define your own shortcuts, you can use agent process improvement. As you can see on the screen guys, it can configure a trigger through which it can do a particular set of tasks. For example, if you want to set your own trigger, you can use Ctrl T and every time you press Ctrl T together, you want it to check the time of New York and keep it there. So anytime you go somewhere, you will get the New York time on its own and you don't have to Google it. So this is what agent process improvement is. Now obviously you can use this for some high grade projects, but whenever you want to use it for assisting the user to automate tasks, you can use agent process improvement. Moving forward, the fourth kind of project is robotic enterprise framework. So basically, those kind of projects in which you want to include states, we use this particular project. So now what are these states? Let me explain you with an example. So when you start your computer, you see a starting window screen. So this starting window screen stays there until and unless each and every process required for your operating system isn't loaded in the memory. So once all the required processes are loaded, It moves from the starting state to the execution state, and from this state it goes to the shutting state wherein it kills all the processes. So I've given you an example of three states here, right? The starting state, the execution state, and the shutting down state. So if you don't want to go to the next state without completing all the tasks in the present state, then you use Robotic Enterprise Framework. So basically, these are the four kinds of projects available in the UiPath tool. Now, before moving forward to creating your own projects, let's understand the various components of UiPath platform. Well, there are mainly three components of UiPath platform: UiPath Studio, UiPath Robot, and UiPath Orchestrator. UiPath Studio is an advanced tool that enables you to design automation processes in a visual manner using drag and drop functionalities that we have been discussing. Coming to UiPath Robot, UiPath Robot executes the processes built in Studio just like humans. Finally, coming to the UiPath Orchestrator, Orchestrator is a web application that enables us to deploy, schedule, monitor, and manage robots and processes. So don't worry guys, we'll be discussing each one of these in the coming up videos, but for now let us concentrate on UiPath Studio. So now let us discuss the UiPath Studio components. When you open your UiPath Studio, you see a screen like this. Now if I choose the blank project, I'll be asked to enter the name for it and then click on create. So let's just say I create the project name as project 1 and then click on create. So that's how a new project will be created for me. Now when you reach the screen guys, you'll see different kinds of tools. You have the ribbon wherein you can see various stuff like the recording tool, data scraping, screen scraping, etc. Don't worry guys, we will discuss each one of them in a while. On the left side you have the activity pane wherein these have all the small tasks. All you have to do is you have to just drag and drop it here in the workspace and configure it so that it works according to the requirement. For every activity that you drag and drop, the configuration can be handled here in the properties pane. So all the properties here can be configured on the right side. At last, if you see the bottom section of the UiPath tool, it has variables, arguments, and imports. This is the section wherein you'll be creating variables, deleting variables, and also dealing with arguments. So guys, that was a summary of all the components of UiPath Studio. So now let us discuss each one of these components one by one. Let's jump into the first component, that is ribbon. So ribbon has four features that are very useful. These four features are recording, scraping, user events, and variables. So let's discuss them one by one. So what is recording? So like I said, one way of telling your computer what to do is by dragging and dropping activities in your workspace. But that's tiresome for large complex projects, isn't it? So if you want to lessen your time by dragging and dropping and configuring each and every activity, then what you can do is you can record each and every step and then let the computer mimic those actions. So what I'm trying to say is you'll just hit the record button and then you'll exactly perform those actions which you want your computer to do. It's very interesting, isn't it? Now let's go on to scraping. Now what does scraping mean? So basically when you're trying to extract something is called scraping. So when it comes to data scraping or screen scraping, we're trying to extract data from the screen of the computer. So there are basically two types of scraping available: the screen scraping and the web scraping. Web scraping basically deals with the websites. So whenever we want to extract data from websites, we call it as web scraping. And whenever we want to extract data from desktop applications or you want to extract data from workplaces where you don't have any structured data, then you use screen scraping. So basically, whenever we have structure defined on websites, then we use web scraping. Else, when we do not have a structured data, we use screen scraping. Then we have the user events. So any kind of input that you can give to your computer is known as a user event. So as a user, the only kind of input that you can give to the computer could be a mouse or a keyboard event. So you can either enter values through keyboard or through mouse. So all the activities like scrolling up or down, clicking the left or the right button of the mouse come under the user events. Now, the fourth component is a very important component, that is variables. So variables here have the same concept as in maths. As the name suggests, the values inside the variables may vary. So just in case you want to change a value or you think that the value of a particular thing will change over the process flow, you have to include inside the variables. So guys, these are the four main components included in the ribbon. There is one more component, selectors, but because of the length in selectors, I'll be not including it in this video, and you can refer to the video already in the playlist to learn more about selectors. But for today, we are discussing these four components present in the ribbon. Also, we have another component known as new. So whenever you click on new, you can create new files inside your project. And let me tell you that you can create as many files required in your project. So when you create your project, the first file that you get is the main file. Main file is the place where your main program is present. Well, you can create your complete project on a single file, but that is not recommended when you're creating projects on a business level. So you always should try to break your programs into parts as that makes it easy to debug and upgrade. So when you break your programs into different parts, each part is put in a file and then you can include these files as functions in your main file. So now what kind of files you can actually create? So when you click on new, you can see three types of options: the sequence, flowchart, and the state machine. So the sequence has the template for a blank project. The flowchart has the template for a simple flowchart. And finally, the state machine has the template for a robotic enterprise framework. So now let us move forward and discuss the next pane in the list, that is the activity pane. Using the activity pane, you can create sequences, you can create processes that are required in the project. All the activities are listed in the activity pane. All you have to do is you just have to drag and drop these activities inside the workspace. So basically, workspace is the place wherein you'll design your project. So you don't have to code or you don't have to include variables or import libraries. All that is required is you simply have to drag and drop the component that you want to include in your program. So now let us get an overview of all the domains present in the activity pane. There are basically 6 domains in the activity pane, and each one of these have several activities in them. So the first domain is UI automation. Now what is this UI automation domain? This would basically include all the user interface tools. So let me just go to the tool and show you. So when you go to this domain, inside this, you can see that it has element, text, OCR, image, browser, and window. So just in case if you want to do something with your mouse or you want to click something or you want to hover something, then you can use the mouse option of UI automation. Similarly, if you want to do something with the keyboard, then you can use the keyboard part of the UI automation. Same is the case with the control. So control would basically include something like you want to get your text highlighted or you want to do something on the user interface, then you have to use control. So whenever you want to do activities like this, you can refer to the element of UI automation. Whenever you want to play with an image, for example, you want to click on an image wherever it might be present on the screen, then you can use the image tool of UI automation. If you want to extract text out of an image, then you can use the OCR option of the UI automation tool. So all these various kinds of options are available under the UI automation tool. Then comes the user events. So user events would basically include triggers that you would require whenever you're working in a program. For example, whenever you press Ctrl X, it cuts the selected portion of a program. So all these are basically user events that you can define under these triggers. Next, we have the orchestrator. Orchestrator is basically used when we have multiple computers having UiPath Studio installed on them, and then we have multiple programs running on them. So all these programs and all these computers can be controlled with one computer using Orchestrator. But Orchestrator is something which is not fully functional inside the Community Edition. So when you buy the Pro Edition, you'll get full access to the functionalities of the Orchestrator. The system would basically allow you to perform activities such as creating a file, deleting a file, or moving a file. So all these tasks which are system related can be done under this domain. Next comes the system. So system would basically allow you to perform activities such as creating a file, deleting a file, or moving a file. So all these tasks which are system related can be done under the system domain. Then we have the programming domain, which includes all the programming concepts, which basically includes error handlings or concepts like if else or any other such concepts like that, right? So you don't have to code anything, they're all available in terms of activities, so you just have to drag and drop them. And then finally, we have the workflow. So whenever you want to take decisions, we use workflow. So guys, there are endless activities which are already available on the activity pane. And on top of that, if you want more activities, then you can download it from the UiPath activity pane. So now let us move on to the properties section, which is present on the right side of the UiPath tool. So let me just go to the tool. So for example, let me just say I drag and drop any activity. Let me just say I drag and drop the mouse event. On the right side, you can see all the properties related to it. So guys, you can see properties like the input section, the output section, the key modifiers, the continue on error, the delay after, everything, right? So all the properties are maintained on the right side of the section. Now moving forward, we have the control bar, that is the bottom section of the UiPath tool. So when you talk about control bar, we have variables, arguments, and imports. So you can create variables by clicking on this. And then once you click on this, you just have to type in the variable name and then the variable is created for you. So basically, whenever you have an activity listed, you can create variables inside that particular activity and then you have arguments. So what are these arguments? So basically, arguments are used when you use multiple files. So if you're using a main file and you want to call a sequence identifying another file that has all its variables passed as arguments, so basically arguments is something that you can pass on to the other files. So whenever you're working with programs or with sequences which are there beyond one files, then you use arguments. And then we have imports. Imports are basically activities that are imported by default whenever you're trying to create a program. So that is not something you should be much bothered about. Okay. So guys, this was the basic overview of UiPath Studio. So now let's quickly create a simple project which will greet you with your name. Say I want to create a program which will greet me by saying welcome to this session and then whatever name I specify. For that, we will first drag and drop the sequence. So let me just search for sequence and I'll drag and drop it here. Once it is done, inside this sequence, we will specify everything. Now the first thing I want my program to ask is my name. So in the search bar, I'll search for the input dialog. So let me just search input dialog and then drag and drop it here. In this input dialog, I have to fill in the title and the label. So for the title, let's just say enter name. So let me just type in enter name. And now to fill in the label, that is what the dialog will ask me. So let's just say I type in what's your name. All right. So one important thing that I would like to tell you is that every text that you use in UiPath should be under quotes. Only when you're using variables or numbers, you won't be using quotes. Okay. So once it asks my name, I want it to display a message saying welcome to this session and the name specified. So for that, let me just search message box in the search bar and then drag and drop it here. Once it is done, let me just type in the text. So let me just say welcome to this session and space. All right. So that's how I'll get my name. So let me just run this program and show you. So when you run this program, you get a dialog box with the title entered as enter name and the label as what is your name. So let's just say I type my name as Sahiti and then click on OK. Okay, so once you click on OK, I observe that my name isn't getting stored anywhere. So if I want my name to be stored anywhere, then we would need variables. So when we go back to the input dialog, you can observe in the properties pane that the output isn't stored anywhere. So for the output to be stored anywhere, you have to create variables. So let me just say I'll create a variable entered name. And then in the properties section of the input dialog, I put the output in the variable entered name. All right. Once it is done, I also want to get a message greeting with my name. So for that, in the message box, just type in the text that you want as a message and then concatenate it with the variable name outside the quotes. So let's just say I type the text as welcome to this session and give the variable name. All right. So now to check if there are any errors or not, just click outside the sequence and see if there are any exclamations. All right. So there are no exclamations. That means that program is error free. All right. So now let's just run this program. So when you run this program, let me just enter the name as Sahiti and then click on OK. All right. So you see this message as welcome to this session, Sahiti. That means you see the message with your specified name. So that's how you can work with your simple program. So guys, that's how you can build a simple program in UiPath. So that was a basic overview of the UiPath Studio. That's all for today's session. Thank you and have a great day.
I hope you have enjoyed listening to this video. Please be kind enough to like it, and you can comment any of your doubts and queries, and we will reply them at the earliest. Do look out for more videos in our playlist and subscribe to Edureka channel to learn more. Happy learning!